Welcome to Nice and Blunt. My name is Adam Riancho, and for today's video, it's going to be a little more geared towards the subscriber league, but we're going to break down all 12 rosters, let you know what the prices were, where I think there are some stud teams, as well as maybe some holes that might hold some teams back. I think every team is very competitive, but we're going to go team by team and let you know how they all panned out. So let's get it going. Vámonos, muchachos. Here we are. This is my roster. 4th and 20 is the team name. On the left, you can see the prices for all of these players. Let me scroll down and show you the full starters. We got Anthony Richardson at the quarterback position, Jahmyr Gibbs, Isaiah Pacheco as the starting running backs. The wide receiver core may not have like a truly elite top 5 guy, but I think it's pretty deep. I got Nico Collins, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins in the flex. On the bench, I've got Jameson Williams for $1, Brian Thomas, Josh Palmer, and the tight end is Jake Ferguson. My backup running back is Rico Dowdle. I also have Jonathan Brooks on IR. I'm also rolling with Jared Goff as the backup QB. The Steelers and the Bills I have at defense at the moment. And then my kicker is Cameron Dicker of the LA Chargers. So here is the team. I feel really good about it. I got several of my ride or die players, 4 of 5. And although I didn't get Tank Dell, I did get Nico Collins for a significant price hike. So this is the roster, and I feel pretty good about it. In terms of like, obviously auction drafts are different than snake drafts, but I'll give you like a round by round breakdown. I got no one in the top 12. I do not have a first round pick on this team, but I swapped that out for what equates to 3 second round picks with Jahmyr Gibbs for 46, Isaiah Pacheco for 44, and Nico Collins for 33. Knowing in hindsight that Stephon Diggs went for 13, Tank Dell for 12, I may have overspent a little bit on Nico Collins, but I'm happy to have him. I got Brandon Ayuk for 26, which is essentially a 3rd round pick. I dipped back in with 2 5th round picks, T. Higgins for 15, Anthony Richardson for 13, and then I waited until round 8, essentially, to grab my tight end with Jake Ferguson for $6. Jonathan Brooks and Brian Thomas were 9th round picks. Brooks for 5, Brian Thomas for 4, and then before getting 5 $1 players, I got Joshua Palmer for 3, and I think that will really help me out in terms of bench depth and floor plays at the position. I love getting the shot on Jameson Williams for $1. It is not worrisome at all at that price. The risk is baked in. And then I got a steal in Rico Dowdle for $1 as well. So really like that. I actually drafted Kirk Cousins, but yesterday Jared Goff was dropped and I swapped out Goff for Cousins. So I'm happier with Goff. I think he has a higher floor. I do have him ranked higher. And I also have that Gibbs JMO stack if I need it. So we'll see about that, but I feel really good about my roster. Very competitive. I like the depth, and overall I think everyone is a very, very good player in an excellent offense. That's what I love about this team. I'm invested in the Colts offense with the quarterback who could lead the league in rushing if he stays healthy. I got multiple Lions. I've got a Chief. I've got a Texan. I've got a Niner. I've got a Cowboy. I've got a Bengal. And then I have a Jaguar, another Cowboy, and a Charger as well. Like, these are all good offenses, and I see a lot of upside all across the board. Nice floor plays as well. But let me pivot to another team. We'll head over to Angus's team just briefly, just to remind you what it is. We broke down his team over on the podcast episode already, so I'm not going to go too in depth, but here is the price breakdown for hit and run. Really high priced options in terms of Breece Hall, Justin Jefferson, Garrett Wilson, all at a 1st round price, and that was over 75% of the budget. So he dipped back in what was essentially the 6th round on Kyle Pitts, then the 8th round with Chase Brown, a couple 10th rounders with JSN and Braylon Allen, an 11th rounder with Jordan Addison, and then essentially 7 late round picks for all $1. He's got good depth at running back, but they're all kind of handcuffs, and no one is like a true stud other than Breece Hall at that position. So we'll see how it goes, kind of a studs and duds approach, but that combo of Brees, Garrett Wilson, and Justin Jefferson going to be tough to beat. I think Kyle Pitts is the key on this team. If Pitts is great, then this team is a juggernaut. If Pitts sucks, then it's going to be a little bit difficult. But let's move on. We already went into detail on Angus's team. Let's show you another one. Let's go to Johnathan Day, Johnny Football's team right here. And let's show you the prices as well. Not that one. Here we go. Johnny Football. These are the prices on his squad. So highest price player would be Derrick Henry for $40, and that is essentially a second round pick on Derrick Henry, 18th overall. He also has Kenneth Walker at what was a third round price, along with Deebo Samuel, another third round pick, with who else? Jalen Waddle for $19 was a fourth round pick. Najee Harris for $18, another fourth round pick. James Cook for $17. I think that was a really, really nice price on James Cook, another fourth round pick. Kyler for $16, Trey McBride for $14. That's an elite stack for fifth round picks. Like, that is going to be tough. If those two players are fantastic, then we might be screwed. So really good depth in the starting roster, like really good running back core with Derrick Henry, Kenneth Walker, and James Cook. The bench is a little bit thin at receiver, but with Najee Harris there can be some trades made at running back. He's got Marquise Brown as well as Romeo Doubs, Blake Corum, Pat Freiermuth, the backup tight end, and Jerry Jeudy. I'm not in love with Jeudy personally, but there's obviously a world where he works out and he looks really good. So really solid depth here. It's just kind of just a question of like, do Waddle and Deebo get it done? I think if one of them goes down, there is some heavy risk here because the receiving core is not that deep, but there's definitely some trade potential with all these running backs, and running backs can become scarce later on in the season when injuries do strike. So I'm worried about that Kyler Trey McBride stack. That's going to be tough to beat. But a kicker, really good one in Younghoe Koo for $1. That's the way to go. Chiefs defense for $1. And while he may not have like a first round pick either, I think it's a really balanced roster and a lot of like high mid round players that get it done. So love the competitiveness of this roster, and that Kyler Trey McBride stack is phenomenal. So let me know what you think about Johnny Football's team in the comments. I think it's a nice one. But let's move over to Fight Me's roster, Nick Mullison, and let's pull up his prices. Where is Fight Me? Here we go. Here we go. So a bit of a studs and duds approach. I mean, there's going to be very few teams with the combination of Christian McCaffrey and CeeDee Lamb. The 101 and 102 in a typical draft, they went at a price of the 102 on CMC, and CeeDee Lamb went as the 105. Amon-Ra St. Brown was actually more coveted, went for $2 more in our auction draft. But I love the fact that he has the Dak Prescott stack. Like, if CeeDee Lamb truly goes off, that's going to be awesome. But at the moment, CeeDee Lamb is ruled out. What is that? Is that new? The Cowboys were granted a 2-game roster exemption for Lamb on Tuesday and have placed him on the commissioner's exempt list. Lamb can be activated at any time, and he still has just under 2 weeks left to get back into game shape prior to Week 1's road matchup. So, yeah, I think that'll be a non-factor. Lamb will play. That is not concerning at the moment. But if he wanted to, he could put him on IR technically and just pick up somebody else. However, he's going to probably have to drop him. So no need to do that. So let's ignore that and just get back to this roster breakdown. So Dak and CeeDee Lamb at the stack for QB wide receiver could be deadly. If Dak puts up MVP caliber numbers again, that's going to be tough to beat. But CMC, that's a nightmare as well. He was kind of penalized. He couldn't get back in for a while, and his next highest priced player would be Raheem Mostert for $18. That's a late fourth round price on Raheem Mostert, similar value as Najee Harris, James Cook. So kind of got screwed in that regard. I would much rather have James Cook for $17 or $18 than Raheem Mostert. But obviously Mostert scored 21 touchdowns last season, and he kind of got forced into that position because Mostert was kind of at a tier break at running back. He went kind of late in the draft, and there were very few like comparable options later on. So it is what it is, but definitely a good offense to invest in with Raheem Mostert. Let's hope he stays healthy at 32 years old. But Rashee Rice is the wide receiver 2 for $16 as well. That's a high 5th round pick in terms of price. So I got T. Higgins for the same price. I think personally I'd rather have T. Higgins, but it's not like that much different. I could see Rashee being more valuable. So that's what it is there. He got Tank Dell for 12 though. I think that's a steal. I love Tank Dell in the flex here. And then George Kittle's the tight end. Really good investment into San Francisco as well. Kittle has that massive spike week potential, so could really put up like in elite numbers any given week. The defense is the Vikings. I think week 1 that's good against the Giants, but we'll see about long term. Kicker Cairo Santos. That is fine. Bench, we got Xavier Worthy, so another investment in the Chiefs receiver core. And then these 2 running backs, I think, come in really clutch for depth. He's got Jalen Wright, which I think is a very important handcuff to Raheem Mostert. He got Jalen for $1. Also, Jordan Mason for $1 as well. So critical handcuff there for Christian McCaffrey. That should really help him in the long run if CMC goes down. But some interesting flyers as well with Jalen Polk. We'll see about his development as a rookie. Paid $2 for him. And Dontavian Wicks, he paid only $1 for. So we'll see if it's worthwhile. Going to be hard to like bet on until we see it in that crowded Packers receiver core, but definitely some high upside with Dontavian. And then Jaleel McLaughlin for $2, also a decent bet in terms of bench depth at running back. I like the team. A little bit top heavy, but no complaints there. The guys that are at the top are fucking studs. So really good depth at receiver, in my opinion, at least in the starting roster. Going to be tough to beat. And then the CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Christian McCaffrey combo is fantastic. So fight me. Putting up a real tough fight here. We'll see how that goes. Let me know what you think of Fight Me's roster in the comment section. Let's move on to GoGo Bongzilla, Jason Hopkins team. And let's find this in the spreadsheet. Here we are. GoGo Bongzilla's price breakdown. Jason Hopkins is the league manager, and at QB he has Caleb Williams. Running backs are Kyron Williams, Devin Singletary, so it kind of drops off after the top guy. Also has Brian Robinson, Jerome Ford as well, so really solid depth. Devin Singletary, we'll see about that, but I'm not a huge fan of Singletary, but at least he has a lot of volume headed his way. Receivers though, really, really nice at the top. He's got Tyreek Hill for $54, and Tyreek went as the wide receiver 4 in this draft. So good value there for $54. Not bad at all. Mike Evans is the wide receiver 2, and how much did he spend on Mike Evans? It was $27. So a 3rd round pick on Mike Evans. The tight end is Dalton Kincaid, spent $11 on Kincaid. That's a 6th round pick. So I think that's a good value on Kincaid personally. Really nice. But the flex is Cortland Sutton, and Cortland was $9, so about a 7th round pick. He went for more than Rome Odunze and Deontay Johnson. Zay Flowers went for 8. So would you rather have Flowers for 9 or Cortland Sutton? I think personally I'd rather have Flowers, but I think that was like a tier break type of situation. Not bad at all. He also has on the bench Christian Kirk, who he got for $6. I think that's a pretty good price on Christian Kirk. Also got Curtis Samuel for $1. That turf toe probably brought down his price. And then Mike Williams for $3. There's some high upside with Mike Williams if he can stay healthy. And then Aaron Rodgers is the backup quarterback. We'll see about that. I would love a stack on Rodgers, but I think for the sake of depth, it's not too bad. So that's the roster. I'd like to mention it's kind of interesting the price on Brian Robinson here. Let's keep that in the frame. Brian Robinson went for 17. And I mentioned earlier, you also could have gotten James Cook for 17, Najee Harris for 18. So I would say that's a little bit expensive on Brian Robinson. So maybe that was an overspend. I remember it happened kind of early on in the auction. So We'll see if that actually pays off, but I think it's kind of counterbalanced by Jerome Ford at $6. I love the price on Jerome Ford. I think Jerome Ford could be a league winner if Nick Chubb never pays off. So at least for like 8 games, I think you have really good floor production from Jerome Ford, and I personally might consider putting him in the starting lineup above of Sutton in week 1, but we'll see about that. He can make his own decisions. Let me know what you think of GoGo Bongzilla's team in the comment section. Some high upside studs with Kyron and Tyreek Hill. Love the tight end, and I think there's some very good depth on the bench. The bench is one of the better ones, in my opinion. But let's move on to another team. Let's talk about Hertz Almighty, Ethan Annabelle's team, who, I got to be honest with you, Ethan, you pissed me off at the end of the draft. I don't blame you at all, but I nominated the Chargers defense for $1 and you outbid me on them for $2. I get it, man. They get the Raiders in week 1, followed by the Panthers in week 2, and then in week 3 they get the Steelers. The Chargers defense are going to be a top 10 play those first 3 weeks. You can always figure it out later on. So I don't blame you. I just wanted them myself, and kudos to you for keeping them away from my roster. But I was pissed. I was fucking upset about that. But hold on, let me get this in frame. There we go. These are all the prices on Hertz Almighty's squad. He paid a 103 price on Amon-Ra St. Brown, tied with Christian McCaffrey for technically the 102 at $62. The only player more expensive in this auction was Breece Hall. Amon-Ra St. Brown was technically the #1 wide receiver in terms of price. And I understand the floor is just so safe. There was only one game last year where St. Brown put up less than 14 points in half PPR. You know you have a stud receiver every single week. So that's really valuable to have. The only risk is injury. Otherwise, you are locked in to production. And with a 100-yard bonus in this scoring setting, I think St. Brown is one of the safest guys to hit it on a weekly basis. If he doesn't, he's still going to get you a touchdown. So really have no complaints with paying up on St. Brown. I understand the bidding war you got into, and I would have done the same myself if my budget allowed for it. But at the running back 1, he's got Johnathan Taylor for a price of $52, so has 2 round 1 players. He also has Travis Etienne for $45, which was a second-round pick. He waited a while, though, to get back in. His next highest-priced option was Mark Andrews for $12. That was a high 6th-round pick. He also took Calvin Ridley for $10, another 6th-round pick as well. So the starting roster, pretty complete. Those top 2 receivers as well as top 2 running backs are very competitive. I love the Mark Andrews tight end as well. But his next highest investment was Joe Burrow for $6. I will say this. I'm not in love with the price on Ezekiel Elliott. You paid $4 for Zeke. He is on your bench as your RB3. And I personally have Rico Dowdle ranked above him. I got Dowdle for $1. I think I got the better investment. There's definitely less risk for $1, but $4 is not that big of a deal. I think it was just the ESPN pre-draft values that put him at the forefront of your mind and had you nominating him early. But, you know, I could be wrong. It could definitely be Zeke, who has all of the touchdown value in Dallas. So we'll see how that works out. You did snipe me on the Chargers at that $2. I was fucking mad about it, but really good decision, man. A really good investment. But the rest are all $1 picks. So DeAndre Hopkins in the flex for $1. If he can get healthy by like week 2, that's going to be dope as fuck. He's also got a swing on A.D. Mitchell, who I think is a very interesting sleeper wide receiver. I think Mitchell could have a big role in Indianapolis, and if Michael Pittman ever goes down, he would be my bet to be their #1 guy. So A.D. Mitchell, interesting option. Also has Zach Charbonnet with some elite handcuff potential, but we'll see if his role is actually going to contribute. That is a little dicey to start the season. He also has Adam Thielen for $1, Tyler Lockett for $1, and then kicker Evan McPherson for $1, Jacoby Myers, very solid floor play for $1 as well. So I feel good about the depth. We'll see if Thielen actually contributes, but it's good to have some options to drop. You know, like we're all going to make some mistakes. We're all going to ignore some players in the draft that should have been taken. And by the time we hit week 2, like you're going to want to make some waiver moves for potential league winners. Having guys that might do nothing week 1, like Adam Thielen, is not a bad play at all. Adam Thielen could be as good as last year. It is possible. He did put up over 1,000 yards in Carolina last season. But I think the starting roster is really good. If I forgot Joe Burrow for 6, that's the quarterback on this team. And Burrow is, I think, a little extra valuable in this league because we have a 2.5-point bonus for every 300 and 400 yard game. So if you hit 400 yards, you get an extra 5 points. And Burrow is one of the guys who could do that multiple times next season. He's at least going to hit 300 many times as well. So I do like the Burrow acquisition. I think the starting roster is really, really safe. Like maybe Hopkins is a little dicey, but everybody else I feel really confident in. And I really like that Chargers defense. Very sneaky pick. So this is Hurts Almighty. Probably might change the name given Jalen Hurts is no longer on the roster. But that is the team. Let me know what you think of Hurts Almighty in the comment section. Let's move on. We have another 6 teams to mention. Salsbury Suicide, also known as Eduardo Corocchio, over here. I think, yeah, here we go. Is that in frame? No. There we go. These are the prices on Salsbury's roster. Interesting strategy from Salsbury. He nominated Jaden Daniels and got him for $12. Then he nominated Justin Herbert, who he let him take for $1. And we thought he would be done, but he started to price enforce on Jordan Love and got him for what I think is a steal at $3. So nobody has better quarterback depth than Salsbury. Granted, having 3 is not the most important thing to have. I think we might see him drop Justin Herbert at one time mid-season. I don't think he needs all 3. And if Jaden Daniels is that top 5 ceiling type of guy with his rushing value, then it's going to be a little interesting to see if he messes up on who to start on a weekly basis. But I feel like Justin Herbert is a bit of an unnecessary pick. For $1, though, I don't think it's that punitive. So really good depth at quarterback. Love, I think, could be a potential MVP sleeper this year. He got Love for $3. That was probably a steal. We all kind of just said, like, fine, go ahead and have 3. But I think we may have fucked up. I would have liked somebody to price enforce on Love for at least 4. I did not do it myself. My budget was kind of trying to be conserved for other positions, but really good quarterback situation. That's on lock. The running back situation, the depth kind of concerns me. He's got Josh Jacobs at the top, which is very good. He spent the most on Jacobs at $39. That equates to a mid-second round investment. Jacobs was the RB11 in this draft, so not bad. For $39, I think that is a very good price for an RB1. But J.K. Dobbins is the 2. Granted, he also has Gus Edwards on the bench, and he spent a total of $4 on Gus and $5 on J.K. Dobbins to get the guaranteed RB1 in the Chargers offense. I think is a safe investment. Hopefully it's not too much of a committee where they both eat into each other's value, but I think there's some really high upside. If Dobbins can stay healthy, he does have some massive league-winning upside, and Gus could score like another 15 touchdowns this season behind a great O-line. So I like having both. I think that's a very safe approach. And then the 4th guy would be Javonte Williams. He spent $9 on Javonte Williams. So technically Javonte's the RB2, but I think there is some higher upside with the Chargers duo. So I think the running back core is really solid. Having Josh Jacobs, I think, is really valuable, in all honesty. I'm high on Jacobs this year. But the wide receiver core is pretty competitive. He spent the most on Drake London for $35. That's a mid second round pick. He also has Marvin Harrison for $34 in the flex there. So 3 second rounders. And then you got Michael Pittman for $25, who equated to a mid third round pick. Personally, I would have preferred to spend a little less on Pittman, but I have Anthony Richardson. If Richardson smashes, you would expect Pittman to be part of that equation and for him to pay off as well. I nominated Pittman because of his pre-draft value being like in the low 40s, and I think understandably so. Michael Pittman went for about 25. That's a much safer bet on that type of player. So receiver's pretty solid. He also has Terry McLaurin, who he got for $20. That's a really nice option on the bench. He also has the Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin stack. So that could really work out well, especially if one of those receivers goes down. Maybe London does not live up to expectation, but Terry, I think, could be a top 30 receiver this year. That's going to be nice. He also has Jaden Reed, who I think he got for a steal. Jaden Reed for $6. Feels really safe. Stacked up with Jordan Love as well. I think that's the safest Packers receiver you can get. So I love the receiving core. I think it's really, really solid. All are inside my top 40, and they all have some really high spike potential as well. So if Marvin Harrison can be elite, this is going to be a tough team to face, and especially if that Chargers running back situation works out, if there's a clear guy you want, that is great. But he did punt tight end. That is the shaky aspect of this roster. Noah Fant is the starter, but he got him for $1. So he can definitely get some depth on the bench off the waiver wire pretty soon. And we're probably all going to miss on at least 1 or 2 tight ends this season. He can probably get a really good option if he's willing to pay up on waivers with Fab. So I like the roster. I'm not sure Justin Herbert was necessary, but for $1, you can definitely drop him at no penalty. The Texans defense, Jake Elliott for both $1 is a really nice option as well. I'm not fully convinced they're like the best start at the Colts week 1, but they do have some talent. I do think that's a fine defense to have. You can always stream the position as the year goes on. But love the quarterback depth. The running back depth is solid, and wide receiver is going to offer you a lot of value, some good trade options as well. So really competitive team with Salsbury Suicide, kind of similar to my approach. Passed on round 1 guys, loaded up in round 2 and 3, and pieced it together with good bench depth. I like Salsbury Suicide's roster quite a bit. Let's move on, though. Let's pivot to GOATMODE's team. Gavin Haig, who you've seen in the comments many times, is the league manager. Let's show you his prices here on the screen. In the left-hand side, these are the prices on GOATMODE's roster. He had Saquon Barkley for $50. That was his highest priced guy, who was tied for 12th overall, a first-round pick at the end of the day. He also got in the mid-4th with like 4 guys in round 4. Jalen Hurts for $22, a stud QB paired up with Saquon. So he's locking up every single rushing touchdown for the Eagles. That could really pay some dividends. I do like that combination. He also has Devontae Adams for $21. Devontae in the 4th is a pretty good option. I was not high on Devontae in the late 2nd. Even the 3rd round is a little bit not that worth it for me, but once you hit round 4 to get Adams there, I do like that price. On Adams, there's a lot of consistent production in terms of volume headed his way. If he gets traded to the Jets, oh boy, that'd be fantastic. So Adams is the wide receiver 1. A little bit dicey with George Pickens for $17. He had Pickens as a low-end 4th round pick, technically the first pick of the 5th round at $17. But he also has, at receiver on the bench, Zay Flowers for a steal. He got Zay Flowers for $8. And as we mentioned, we also saw, who did I bring up earlier that went for like $9? We saw Cortland Sutton for $9, Zay Flowers for $8. I think is fantastic. So really good option on the bench. I could see Flowers making it into the lineup a little bit more often than Pickens if Pickens is too inconsistent. So love the steal on Zay Flowers. And then also in the starting roster, he has Aaron Jones for $18. Let's hope he stays healthy. There's always some upside with Aaron Jones. He also has James Conner for $13, so a little bit shaky. If they get hurt, that's a little bit of a risk, but definitely some high spike week potential. If Conner stays healthy, last year he was averaging like 15 points per game. James Conner could be a top 12 running back this season if everything goes right. So some really high production at running back. Let's hope the vets stay healthy. But at tight end, he has Travis Kelce for $13, the same price as James Conner. So that equates to a high 6th round price. And I do feel good about that tight end situation. We'll see how it works out. The one area where I didn't love his price on him, he spent $19 on DeAndre Swift. So that puts DeAndre Swift as a 4th round pick. And that is where I think he may have overspent a little bit. But I think it's counterbalanced by Jaylen Warren for $3. I have them both in a very similar tier. But if you told me at the end of the draft you spend a combined $21 on Swift and Warren, I think it works out. Running backs were very coveted later on in the draft, and I think we had a bit of a collective oversight on Jaylen Warren. There is some massive upside for Jaylen. So the depth at running back is really solid. There are some injury concerns with Jones and Conner, but to have Warren and Swift on the bench really negates any of that risk. So running back is great. Receiver's a little bit shaky, but he has Flowers on the bench. That's really, really nice. He also has Keenan Allen, who he spent $5 on. I'd rather have Rome Odunze, but Rome went for $9. That's a decent price on Keenan. If he proves me wrong, Keenan could be a stud this year. So pretty good there. His backup tight end is Dalton Schultz, who he just got off of waivers, I think, today. He also has Matthew Stafford, who he got for $1 as the backup to Jalen Hurts. His defense is the Browns. That's definitely a good one to have. And then the kicker is Harrison Butker. He spent only $1 on Mr. Butker. So very good, balanced roster. A little bit shaky at wide receiver 2, and might need to trade for some depth at that position. I have some decent options on my bench. I'd be willing to talk trade as the season goes on if you are interested in wide receiver depth as we move forward if Pickens does not live up to expectations. So I would only have some concerns at wide receiver. Otherwise, I think the roster is really good for GOAT mode. Very balanced, very deep, and running back depth is always valuable, especially for trades as we move forward. So let me know what you think of GOAT mode's roster in the comment section. Let's move on to Christopher Dawkins, aka Hawk Tuah Moon. If you were watching the live stream, I was a little bit worried about one of the decisions that Hawk Tuah made on their roster. They took Josh Allen early on, and then he grabbed Lamar Jackson for $20. A combined $45 investment for quarterback 1 and 2 could burn you. That is a bit of a blow to the budget overall, but I think it worked out for him. I don't think it actually made that big of a difference because they went with a much more balanced mid-round approach rather than like loading up on elite options. So Josh Allen was the 5th highest, 5th highest priced player. Lamar Jackson was the 6th highest investment, and he got both for what equated to a late 3rd and high 4th round pick. So at the very least, you know he has stud production at quarterback. If one of them goes down, he is not screwed at all. But I have a feeling it might be difficult to actually trade one of them because even if you do, how good of a value are you actually going to get? Like, you have to keep in mind, you're getting like probably a 4th round pick. If you wanted to trade like Lamar Jackson for maybe like Terry McLaurin, I think that'd be fine. They both went for the same price. But to expect like, you know, someone like Derrick Henry or A.J. Brown for Lamar Jackson, I think would be a little bit unrealistic. So we'll see about that. He might not need to trade him at all, and it might be very beneficial to have both if one of them goes down with injury. So I was worried about it during the draft, but I don't think it I think it worked out because look at the rest of the roster. He got Devon Achane for $30. Rachaad White for $27. Alvin Kamara for $26. Maybe a slight overspend on Kamara, but I think got a steal on Achane. It all works out, and those 3 running backs are really valuable to have. It's not a full PPR league, so Kamara is not like truly elite, but definitely a top 20 option who could put up top 10 numbers if we underestimate him. But DJ Moore is the wide receiver 1 for 26 bucks. Ramondre for 10 is a really good option on the bench. He also has Deontay Johnson for $7. I think that is a steal. In terms of floor plays, hard to beat. Christian Watson for 6. Yeah, there's some injury risk, but some elite upside if he can stay healthy. We'll see if that hamstring is actually sorted out. If Watson can play a full season, he would be a steal for only $6. So I like that. I also love Ladd McConkey on the bench for $5. I think that's a really safe option. He also has Keon Coleman stacked up with Josh Allen, who he only got for $3. And if Keon can replace Diggs as the true number 1 receiver, there is some massive spike week potential. I think the receiver core, while it's not like elite at the top, it only has DJ Moore and then some more balanced like guys inside my top 45. I do see some like very, very good values all across the board there, and it could really work out. He avoided tight end for a long time, almost got boxed out of the position, but he spent $2 to get Dallas Goedert, who is a player that represents a tier break. I got Jake Ferguson for $6, and there's a world where Goddard actually outperforms him. To get him for $2, I think is really, really nice. We'll see if Jahan Dotson impacts his value at all, but Goddard was actually like a really good player for fantasy when healthy. If you remove his first month of the season, he was averaging like 10.5 points per game, and that would be a top 10 guy, definitely a guy you can compete with in this format. So I like the starting roster a lot, some really good depth at running back, and I do think the depth at receiver is underrated. If he does make a trade on one of those quarterbacks, he could swing the entire league in his favor. It's a question of how desperate is somebody else actually going to be to get one of those elite top 5 quarterbacks. We will find out, but the Niners defense, the Texans kicker, very competitive there, and I do like how this team balanced itself out when it was all said and done. I like the approach, and I don't think drafting Lamar Jackson was a bad decision in the end of the equation. Really solid team overall. Let's move on, though. We have 3 more teams to mention, and we're already at about 35 minutes into this video. Nacua Matata, a.k.a. Matt Barrero, has this roster. Let's pull up the prices for you to check out, and here it is. Is this in frame? No, let's center that. There we go. Nacua Matata here on the board. Highest priced player was Puka Nacua, and that's the thing. When you put the player name in your bio as your team name, it's pretty obvious that's who you want, and I got into a bidding war with him. I was jacking up the price to make sure he had to pay up for his guy, and I'm sure he was not too happy about it, but $52 equates to a 10th overall pick, only $2 more than Garrett Wilson, and $1 less than A.J. Brown. So a very fair value on Puka, and it's a good thing you got him. I almost made you pay up more, but I'm glad I didn't. I feel like you might have forced my hand and made me take him myself. So you got him for 52, and I hope it works out for you. That's the one thing when you tip your hand pre-draft, we all know who you want the most, and you may have to spend up a little bit extra. Everybody else was out at like $48, and I kept jacking it up all the way up to 52. So minor inconvenience there, but I do think it worked out. Joe Mixon, though, is the next option on this team who we got in the late 3rd round for $23. And Mixon could be a top 10 running back. He could obviously work out. He is also stacked up with Stephon Diggs, who he got for $13, and CJ Stroud. When you consider the fact I paid $33 for Nico Collins, he got Diggs for $13, I think I overspent a little bit on my Texans receiver. But I do think Nico is the safest bet to be the wide receiver 1, and hopefully it doesn't burn me if I'm wrong about that. But Diggs for 13 equals a mid 6th round pick. I love that price on Diggs. You have heard that I was kind of like out overall on Diggs, but for a 6th round investment, I think that's a really, really good pick. So great value there. Love the stack. And Zamir White is the RB2. He got Zamir White for how much? Zamir for $8. So that would be a 7th round pick, and he hit the 7th round 3 times with Zamir White, Rome Odunze for 8, and the Ravens defense for 8. He had $8 left at the end of the draft, so he just spent it all on the Ravens defense, and that's definitely not a bad one to have. I was shocked that nobody outbid him on Brandon Aubrey. He got Aubrey, the best kicker in the game, for only $1. That was a steal. I kind of regret not grabbing him myself for $2 at least, but I think we all just knew like he was going to be outbidding us. He had like $10 left at the end of the draft for kicker and defense, and it was kind of like, okay, well, if we start to outbid him, he's just going to top it, and it has no impact, so it is what it is. But Brandon Aubrey for $1 at the end of the equation is a steal. He also has CJ Stroud for $19. I forgot to give you the price on Stroud. Also has Malik Neighbors for 17. So Neighbors goes in round 5, and while I wasn't a fan of him on Underdog, we have to take him top of the 3rd. I think in the 5th round, that's a very fair price on Neighbors. I love, though, Devontae Smith here for $16. Really good wide receiver 2. Devontae could possibly be the steal of the draft. Compared to Puka for 52, you might get pretty comparable value at receiver out of Devontae Smith, especially if A.J. Brown goes down. But even if he doesn't, I think Devontae will crack 100 yards several times, and we do have a bonus for that in this league. So really good receiver depth: Puka, Devontae Smith, and Stephon Diggs. Malik Neighbors on the bench with Rome Odunze and Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper went for $7 in this draft, and that was phenomenal value. That equates to an 8th round pick on Amari Cooper. I think Amari and Malik Neighbors are in the same tier personally, so to get him for $10 less is massive. The receiver depth on this team is probably the best across the board. 5 guys that you can feel really confident in, along with Odunze as the cherry on top as the 6th. Holy shit, he's going to have excellent trade value at the end of the day. The only concern is you might get burned by starting the wrong guy. With all those great options, you could make the wrong decision, but still, I think the floor, no matter what, will be fine on a week-to-week basis. So that's really what I love about this team. The receiver depth is elite. The tight end is Evan Ingram. Ingram went for $10. Personally, I'd rather have Jake Ferguson, who I got for $6, but I do think Ingram is extremely safe, high volume, headed his way. The defense is the Ravens. The kicker is Brandon Aubrey, as we mentioned. And on the bench, the running back depth is a little bit shaky, but I think it did work out pretty well. He's got Eckler for $5. He also has Zach Moss for $10, as well as Tyjae Spears for $3. There is a world where all 3 of those guys are actually the RB1 in their respective offenses, and this team could be a nightmare to deal with. I think this is a very legit playoff team we have here on the screen. Stroud is the quarterback. If he does win MVP, is going to be a nightmare, and the receiver depth is just like so solid. I don't see a single hole overall. Running back 2 is a little shaky, but I think it will work out. Really good depth all across the board, and I am a little envious of this roster, not gonna lie, but we'll see what happens. Barrero just missed out on the playoffs last year. I believe I knocked him out 2 years in a row, but let's move on. We have 2 more rosters to mention, and Jason Calhoun with Team RiverRat is right here. Let's pivot to his prices. Is it centered? Yeah, it's here on the screen, and here it is. He's got Bijan for $61. He has Jamar Chase for $54, as well as A.J. Brown for $53. So another team with 3 first-round picks, and that equated to a bit of a lack of depth throughout the rest of the roster. But they're definitely guys you would like to have. Like, it's really hard to beat A.J. Brown, Jamar Chase. I would say maybe only Angus's team with Jefferson and Garrett Wilson competes in terms of elite wide receiver 1 and 2 combo. But where we may have fucked up is allowing him to get Patrick Mahomes for $16. I think that could be a steal at the end of the day. If Mahomes puts up an MVP season, we will probably regret it. But after that, it's hard to feel good about the depth on this roster. Brock Bowers was the next highest priced player at $6, and that equated to an 8th round investment on Brock Bowers. I got Jake Ferguson for $6. I feel a lot safer with Ferguson in the Cowboys offense than Bowers in the Raiders offense. But after that, every other player was worth $1, and it feels a little dicey when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys for essentially a 12th round, 13th round pick at the end of the draft. So true studs and duds approach. The RB2 is very shaky with Bucky Irving currently in the starting rotation. On the bench, he has Trey Benson, Tyler Algier, Ray Davis, and Antonio Gibson. So really hoping for some injuries to help him out. If Bijan goes down, at least he has Algier as a handcuff. If James Conner goes down by like week 3, he may have a stud in Trey Benson. So wish him some luck. He might need it. I think he might be seeking out a trade in the near future if running back 2 is that bad. But who knows, maybe Bucky Irving is the piece you need. Ray Davis could have a lot of touchdown upside, and then maybe Antonio Gibson is solid, but I feel really rough about like hyping up the RB2 on this roster. It's definitely shaky. The flex play at the moment would be Darnell Mooney, and that is a scary proposition. He also has Gabe Davis, Jalen McMillan on the bench, and yeah, he's probably going to be in the market for some trades. But if you're trading away a guy like Jamar Chase or AJ Brown, you're going to get a haul in return, and he can definitely piece it together in that situation. So good luck to you, Jason. Love the top 4 guys, but may have spent a little too much overall at those positions. He spent $190. That's 95% of the budget on only 4 players. We'll find out. On 5 players, excuse me. 5 players made up 95% of the budget. We'll see how that works out at the end of the day. But definitely still competitive. Going to be hard to take down AJ Brown and Jamar Chase on a weekly basis. But let's move on. We have one last team. The reigning champion in this draft would be the Pasture Interferents, Nathaniel Frederick, who did win this league last season with a stud roster that he also got like Trey McBride and Kyron Williams off the waiver wire early in the season. Like week 2, he picked up McBride and Kyron, and that helped lead him to victory. So I don't want to underestimate his plan, but if you were watching the live stream, I was asking like, yo man, why are you ignoring running back so much here? That was my big concern. He waited a long time to grab running back, and his RB1 is David Montgomery, who he paid $15 for. There is also something to keep in mind. He left about $35 of his budget unused. So that I think was the mistake of this draft. There is some solid depth overall. There was a point late in the draft where whoever was nominated was just automatically going to him for a very good price because he had by far the biggest budget later on in the draft. But I think he got boxed out of running back just a little bit too much. His starters at the moment are David Montgomery and Chuba Hubbard, and Hubbard only has like 5 or 6 weeks of true solid production. So he's going to be hounding the waiver wire for backup running backs. We'll see how it works out. But he does have Tony Pollard on the bench as well, so not terrible. And he also has Nick Chubb on IR. If Nick Chubb comes back and plays elite, he could make it all work out in the end. So it could be the combination you need. I have Jahmyr Gibbs, and if Gibbs goes down, then Montgomery's a top 5 running back, and he might be laughing his way to the bank if that happens. So I don't want to fully count him out, but running back is definitely a little shakier than the average roster overall. But the rest of it is pretty solid, especially at receiver. He's got some good options. He has Cooper Kupp for $28, Chris Olave for $36, DK Metcalf for $26, and those were all mid-third round, if not second round picks overall. So I do like the value at receiver. He also has Chris Godwin on the bench. You got Godwin for $7. I think that was a really good price on Godwin. He also has Rashid Shaheed, not my favorite option, but some high spike with potential as well. And David Njoku as the backup tight end with Sam Laporta, I think is a really good combo. I think he could make a trade at tight end and get back a good running back if he wants one. So we'll see how that goes for him. But the quarterback has some depth as well. He has Tua Tagovailoa at the moment as the starter. You know Tua's going to start off red hot. He also has Brock Purdy on the bench, and that's probably the safest backup you can find. So very solid floor plays across the board. If Cooper Kupp is a top 5 receiver, he will be laughing his way to the bank. I just worry a little bit about the running back depth and the starting potential of Montgomery and Chuba Hubbard. That's the only concern about this roster, but otherwise I think it's really competitive still. He will be winning some games. At defense, he has the Jets, and at kicker, he has Justin Tucker, the Baltimore kicker. So really solid team. A little bit hesitant to like say it was the best draft strategy overall, just because he left like $35 unused, and I would have loved to see like a Kenneth Walker on this roster instead of, you know, like Rashid Shaheed. Like that I think would really put this team over the top. The one thing that's missing to really feel like amazing about it. But I do see it as a potential playoff team. I genuinely cannot tell you there's a single team I like don't think is competing. Maybe some of those teams that went studs and duds with like rough depth overall on the bench. Like we just talked about Jason Calhoun's team. If you told me that Bijan went down, he would have a rough time making the playoffs with a lack of depth at running back. But otherwise, like there are very few holes to mention, and I think this is a very competitive league in general. I can't tell you there is an overwhelming favorite at all. So let me know what you think of all the rosters down below in the comments. We went through all 12 of them, and I think this is going to be a fun ride to the championship. Good luck, everyone. If you are in the subscriber league, I really appreciate you joining me. The draft was so much fun, and I can't wait to see how this season pans out. But that's going to be it for this video. My name is Adam Riancho. I hope you enjoyed. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, especially if you want to join next year's subscriber league. Send me an email at niceandblunt@gmail.com, subject line league, to reserve your spot on the wait list for next year. I think we can have enough people for 2 different leagues, 1 auction, 1 snake draft, and you can decide which one you want to be in. But that's it. My name's Adam Riancho. Thank you for watching. Nice and blunt.